things, a little bit of a teaser. If you like free things and surprises, I highly recommend that you stick around until the end. You don't want to miss it. Now, with the intro out of the way, I'm so excited to welcome Neil onto the stage with us today. So Neil is a serial entrepreneur who has built over 8 successful startups over the past 3 decades. Currently, he is the CEO and founder of UpHabit, as well as an associate at the Rotman Creative Destruction Lab and a Peerscale Board Member. His current company, UpHabit, is a new mobile-first venture that is helping people develop, build, and nurture deeper personal connections. So thank you so much, Neil, for joining us this evening. I'm so excited to jump into this discussion with you.
Great. Really happy to be here. Thanks, Anjali.
Awesome. So before we get into things, I'd love for our audience members to get to know a bit more about your background. So many of our audience members are younger, they're students, and they're just starting their entrepreneurial journey. I'd love to know more about what your entrepreneurial journey looked like when you started. For example, what were you like as a kid or a teenager?
Well, I was when I was a little kid, I would wire my tree fort with batteries and lights. So that was a sign that I wanted to be an electrical engineer when I grew up. When I was a teenager, I was totally into computers, really old computers, even punch cards. If you go and Google what those things used to look like. And I really geeked out on technology. I was a geek in high school, and it was either computer programming or playing ping pong. And then I went to university. I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and I became an engineer. And that's been my whole life. So I love building software. I haven't written any in a long time, and now I'm actually getting back into it. But it's been a lot of fun. And my journey has been through 8 startups, as you mentioned. So I'm on my 8th. So I've done a lot of different startups in my life. The first one I started at 26. So that is really old these days to be a startup founder, but back then no one was doing it back then.
So tell me about what made you interested in starting even at 26? Was it what caught your eye about jumping into the space?
Well, I started working for a company called Nortel in their R&D labs. They're telecom manufacturer. They make switches that phone calls go through. And it was considered the big high-tech success story in Canada at the time. And I was working hard. I got the at Nortel, I got the highest job rating you can do in terms of an assessment by your managers. And then they were going to promote me to manager, and it kept, it was stuck in a big pile of files on someone's desk for 9 months, and I wasn't getting my promotion. And I decided that the company was moving too slow for me. So I was going to go out and start my own business. And instead of becoming a manager, I'd be a CEO the next day. So I just decided that I wanted to do something. And back those days, I ran a Mac user group for all of Nortel and B&R employees. I was, well, not all of it, but I was a pretty big player in it. And so I decided naturally I was going to open up an Apple dealership as my very first business in 1988. And if you find me on YouTube, you're going to find a really funny video of me in about 1990 talking about my business and my customers and my employees with a mustache and obviously not gray hair.
Right. So what was your first startup called again?
It was called Get Info. For those of you that use a Mac, when you choose a file, one of the menu commands is Get Info. So I called my company Get Info after that file command.
I see. And there's now the remnants of that, or is a funny or an interesting YouTube video.
Yeah, and we recorded it obviously a really long time ago, before maybe your parents were born, but I had it recorded at broadcast quality. So I found the master tape about 1.5 years ago, and I had it converted to digital. And then I put it on YouTube, because what else are you going to do with a file from that long ago?
That's awesome. So from there, what was the most interesting startup that you worked on from that point in terms of it forced you or it taught you the most?
Boy, they all taught me a lot.
Yeah.
My first one, I was an Apple dealership, so I sold Apple computers. So, I learned a lot about networking because I had to network those things together, and we got to have a name for it. I got to learn a lot about selling into various industries. So we sold to architects, we sold to advertising agencies, any graphic designer in the city, we would sell them computers and all that stuff. So I learned about marketing, I learned about sales, I learned about the networking in that business, and then I did consulting businesses, and I was a consultant, and I started building software companies, and all along the way I learned a lot. I mean, one of the things I didn't realize is when you start and build a business, how much HR and employee care and support, and also weird things that happen to you when you're building a business. I always tell people when you're building a business that about 20 employees, things start to go a little weirder than you weren't thinking about when you first started the business. Just, people have issues and challenges, or they do things and don't do things that they should or shouldn't do. And these are all things you'd never thought you'd face until you became the size of IBM or Microsoft. But actually, they start happening when the business is a lot smaller.
Right. And the theme of this event is how to make your first $1 million. So
Right.
kind of jumping from that, can you tell us about when did you make your first $1 million in revenue? Which business was that? And do you remember when it happened?
Yeah, it was probably the Apple dealership. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, if you want to make $1 million today, you should have just bought, GameStop, 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
But other than that, it was probably my first business where I sold Apple computers and everything. And it took a lot because I was selling someone else's product. In this case, it was Apple Mac. So you only could make so much per box, and you had to sell a lot of them to get to that revenue number. So it took a lot of hard work. And that's when I finally, after I actually closed that business after 5 years, it just got to be an unprofitable industry to be in before Macs got cool again. And but it was interesting, and but I realized with the margins that are involved, I never wanted to get into selling someone else's product again. It's not the thing that I ever wanted to go back to, because it was just such a grind to generate so much revenue for so little profit, gross profit, to pay employee salaries and everything. I just never wanted to do it again. And I've stayed true to my word. It's been, I don't know, 30 years since I closed that business, and I haven't gone into hardware again.
So what was the next business after you made that decision?
Well, I started doing consulting in this product called Lotus Notes. So I started doing it independently. Then I started building a team in the kind of mid 90s, sorry, doing this consulting. So that was my second business. And it was software consulting on a Lotus Notes platform. And that was back when it was cool. Now it's ancient dinosaur, really bad UI and everything. But back then it was considered the cool stuff. So you could make a lot of money doing consulting. And that's where I continued to make money, because you have a bunch of consultants, they're all billable by the hour. If you have a lot of projects and hours, then you make a lot of money in the process. The problem with consulting, though, is that you're limited by the number of hours you have available. So you can never sell 1 million times an hour. It's always you're selling an hour. And it was kind of at that point that I decided I probably didn't want to do a lot of hourly work going forward in the rest of my life, because there's a limit to how much money you can make off it. But I can tell you, it's a great business to earn a good income. And the other thing it's really good for is let's say you're starting a startup, and there's part of that's what I did. If you're starting a startup and you're going to starve for 3 years, you think you're going to starve for 1 year, you're going to starve for 3 years. And in that starvation period, you don't really want to starve. So how are you going to pay the bills while you're building your startup? And what I did with my last startup, there was a bunch of other businesses in between and a bunch of .coms in 99, 2000. But my last business, it couldn't really pay me a salary for 6, 7 years. So what I did is I did consulting on the side. And my consulting customers, the nice thing about consulting is they don't expect you're going to be around all the time. Otherwise, they'd hire an employee. So you're able to do the consulting, make your money to pay the bills, eat food and all that stuff. At the same time, you keep working on your startup on the side. And then when it starts to take off and it can afford to give you a salary, then you pay yourself. But with my last business, which was Nexonia, I would literally hire other employees before I'd pay myself a salary, because I'd say, hey, I got a side gig. I can earn enough there to pay the bills. So I'd rather hire another engineer, another salesperson, start building the company before I'd actually pay myself, because I had this other source of income. Because a lot of times I see startups, they're like, well, I can survive for 3 months and then I need to raise capital. Well, chances of you raising capital at the very early days is still very low. So chances are you're going to run out of cash before you run out of time to build your business. And I always advise startups, make sure you have a side gig or something that'll allow you to eat while you're working on your billion-dollar idea.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you hear about the inception stories of a lot of startups, you never really hear about the starving period or what people did to actually live. So that's a very good point. Just make sure you're eating.
I coach maybe and mentor like 30 to 50 startups a year. And I deal with kind of more advanced startups a bit more now, but I still talk to early stage ones. And I'm like, first, number one thing you have to, let's say you have co-founders, right? So you have two co-founders, you have a co-founder and you're starting the business, and one of you can last for 12 months. The other one can last for 3 months without having an income. Well, that's going to create a problem 3 months from now, because the one's going to want to keep going and the other one's going to say, look, I got to eat, I can't make rent, I got bills to pay. You have to get your necessities sorted out before you can really focus on the business. And going and raising money from VCs or angel investors is not really a typically successful way to do it. You might get some from friends and family. Mom and dad are good at that. But even there's an upper limit. And you also don't want to take a lot of money from your family, because you could not be successful and then you're not going to feel so good. So I always worry about self-sufficiency first in terms of paying the bills. And then I have the freedom to really work the crazy hours that it takes to build a startup.
Right. I'd like to take this as a moment to answer a question that just popped up from an attendee. What was your biggest failure while starting a business? It could be Nexonia or any other one. What was the biggest failure, and what did it teach you?
I've had so many failures and so many mistakes in building businesses that I don't even know where to start. I think that one, making, the one that I still make is I geek out on the product without thinking about the virality of it. UpHabit's a personal CRM. It's really good at bringing all your contacts together. You'll own them forever. You can categorize them with notes and tags and reminders and all this stuff. But when you use UpHabit, no one else knows you're using UpHabit. So that's a challenge if you're trying to scale a business, is because then you have to pay for advertising, which is expensive and all this stuff. So these days I was, and half of you are probably on Clubhouse right now. That's a very viral product. You need people on Clubhouse to talk to them, and you get these referral codes you can hand out once you're on, and I am on. So that's a viral product, and all of a sudden it's got like I think it's over $1 billion valuation now. But they did it because they had a viral component built into their product. And I would encourage everybody to think about how you're going to grow your user base, whether it's a viral component, which is the best, or some other way of growing the business. But worry about not just this cool idea you have, but worry about how you're going to grow it. So I didn't answer your question. So biggest mistake, I don't know. I just can't come up with one. There's just so many. And that's one of the things that's really important about being a startup founder. You are probably going to make more mistakes than you're going to make right decisions. As long as you learn from all your mistakes, and that's one of the values at UpHabit, is we call it make new mistakes. We want people to make mistakes all the time. Just make new ones. It means you've learned from the old ones, and you're going to go off and try new things and make new ones. Because if you just sit around and don't make mistakes, you're really not going to change the world. I mean, Elon Musk just blew up another Starship a couple hours ago. He'll probably blow up another 2 before one lands on its legs properly. But that's just making a mistake, and learn from it and then go off and make a new one.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So ultimately, at the end of the day, failures are important. important part of
Oh,
the learning process.
we've probably read about Elon almost going bankrupt, 2 or 3 times in the last, 10 years. And now he's the richest man sometimes in the world. So make a lot of mistakes. Every single successful entrepreneur, except one I can think of, has made tons of mistakes along the way and things have crashed. But they learn, and that makes them better going forward. That's why Silicon Valley VCs want to invest in founders that have failed, because that person has more experience than the one that hasn't.
Right. And that's a really interesting takeaway, because I feel like as a student, when you're in school, that might seem counterintuitive, that it's actually productive. It's actually, in a way, a mark of success to fail and be open to failure.
Well, when you're learning a new coding language, or you're learning new concepts, you basically screw up all the time before you get it right. And that's the way business is too. One thing you don't want to mess with is if you have team members or teammates or co-founders, care for them, try and not screw up with them, because those are the people that believe in you and they believe in your vision. So that's something that you should really, care about a lot. But all the other stuff, feel free to screw up a lot and learn from it and just be better. My last business, like I said, revenue stayed flat, didn't go anywhere. And then it started doubling every year for 5 years. I literally had a hockey stick, if you know what that means, on my revenue. And I never noticed it because I was too busy selling and trying to hold on to the rocket ship as it was taking off and just changing everything all the time. But I had a hockey stick. I literally plotted it after I sold the business. And then I realized why that company bought my business, why they wanted it so much, is because the revenue was pointed straight up.
Right. And you didn't even notice it during the moment.
No, I had no clue. It was so funny. It was a year later, I plotted the revenue and went, wow, it went straight up. I could have sold it for more money if I waited, but.
Oops. So kind of building off of the last little discussion we had about failure, I'd like to answer a question kind of from the audience. So what do you think are important skill sets and mindsets that are important for entrepreneurs, specifically young entrepreneurs who are just getting started?
Always be curious. Always be ready to pivot. If you're not ready to pivot, you will fail. Listen to what everybody's telling you. A lot of good ideas are going to come your way and you should be open to them, but also trust your gut. I was coaching this week, a woman in New York City. She's a founder of a tech business, and I gave her an idea 2 weeks ago. And she's, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. I'm going to rename my company to what you said. And then she thought about it, and 2 days later, she emailed me and says, I'm going to keep the same name I have. And I was like, okay. And then on yesterday, I guess, or maybe it was Friday, she said, well, she showed me her slide deck for investors, and it had a really bad, boring tagline. I said, we got to spice that up. How about this thing? And we came up with a really good tagline, and she kept that. But it was all about her trusting her gut. And you can hear lots of advice, and people are always good at giving advice, but you have to really internalize it and decide what you think is valid, and then go with that and stick with what your gut's telling you.
So be curious, trust your gut.
Make lots of mistakes.
Lots of mistakes. And kind of more specifically for our audience, many of our audience members are as young as in high school. So for high schoolers, what are some important skills, things that a young person should be working on if they want to build a successful startup one day?
Work on your empathetic skills, work on your ability to kind of work with others. No software, no of these tech startups don't get built with someone ordering people around. If everybody would leave, because that's not the culture any of us want. There's tech skills. The people that I hire, and the people, like I hire pretty experienced people, but if they don't have a passion to learn, I don't want to hire them. If they're not really smart, I don't want to hire them. Because for me, you can teach skills, you can't teach commitment and passion, and desire to learn. Those are things that have to come from within, and I'm always looking for those types of qualities. And I only work with nice people, so they have to be nice or they don't get through the door.
Right. And I find it really interesting how all of your answers, you explicitly said skills you can be taught. All your answers are about soft skills, who is the person? So kind of developing yourself as a human being as opposed to just learning a thing.
Right. Right. And it's important because, when you're building stuff, like we're building a relationship app. So we should be pretty good at relationships, given we're building an app for people that would like that. If we were terrible at it, we'd probably build a terrible app.
Right. So I guess also in terms of being able to live what you're building, it's also helpful.
Yeah. The thing also I want to impress upon everybody is worry about your mental health. Um, Building a startup is chaotic, crazy, mind-numbing. There's lots of stuff that's going to, if you're a founder, there's all kinds of things that are going to come your way that you never thought about. And they're going to be stressful situations all the time. You're like that game Whack-A-Mole. You're whacking moles all the time. And it's a 7/24 thing, so you get some sleep, but typically founders will wake up in the middle of the night because their mind is racing. Hopefully they get back to sleep, but it can be it's a pretty intense experience. And this day and age, it's probably even more intense. And I worry about founders and their mental health. Make sure you have a good network around you. You think that as a founder, everybody kind of reports to you and it's kind of an easygoing thing. The reality is everything flows in your direction. A founder doesn't have anywhere to turn within the company because they're sitting at the top of the pyramid. Although I like to turn my companies upside down, so I'm at the bottom. But you need to make sure you have your network of people to support you when you're going through these challenges. So finding mentors, peers, any family, anybody who can help you keep you settled and stable during that journey, because it is a grind.
Right. And before we end off, I'd like to throw a little bit of a more fun question at you. So now we've talked about your entire journey. We've talked about your advice for teens. Looking back, if you could give teenage Neil any advice, what would that advice be?
Wow. Playlist ping pong. I've been fortunate in my life. I've tried to do everything the right way. I've not stepped on any toes in my life as far as I want to do things the honest, the ethical way, the proper way. So for teenage Neil, he probably did a pretty good job at that. I don't know. Just build software. Don't worry about hardware. Now there are great hardware companies. Elon's building spaceships and cars and everything. But I would say stick with your passions. Make sure you're surrounded by the right people to help you in your journey. And it is a full-on 7-day-a-week thing, typically.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this evening. This was an absolutely fascinating discussion. So thank you so much for being a part of the event, sharing your experiences, and helping to inspire some amazing, bright teens as they kick off their journeys.
And just so everybody knows on the call, I've given Anjali my personal calendar booking. So if you ever want to talk about anything, she'll send you the link. You can book my calendar, and I love geeking out on product ideas and challenges you might have in a startup world.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I'll actually forward it to everyone right now in the chat. So if you open up the chat, you can actually grab that link, save it so you don't lose it. Amazing.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye. So now I'm going to take 5 minutes to answer 3 questions that some of you have sent in about our partner, Startup Dojo. So it should be on the screen right now. So the first question we have in is, I want to work on cultivating the skills that I need to be successful in the 21st century. I also see myself becoming a founder and a CEO one day. I just don't know how to start. How would something like Startup Dojo help me? So imagine yourself in 20 years. You're up on the conference stage because you chose to get off of the beaten path. You chose to pursue what you're passionate about. And mystartupdojo.com is just a bridge that helps you to get there. They help you build your own business before you even graduate high school. The skills that you learn from this experience will benefit you for the rest of your life, whether it's applying to universities, you're in a specific career path, or if you, just like Neil, decide to jump in and pursue your own business. These skills will be invaluable. Just like Neil touched on, the most important skills when it comes to being a leader, running your own business, are often soft skills and developing yourself as a person. So Startup Dojo acknowledges this, and they help you get all these important skills through one-on-one coaching, through access to luminaries, through events that teach you these skills. So the next question is, how much does the program cost? So similar programs are priced at over $500 a month. To make it affordable to as many students as possible and help the best students get access, Startup Dojo has brought down tuition to just $149 a month. Once again, $149 a month to answer that question. The next question is, tell me about some of your students and what they've been able to accomplish so far. So in math class, you're not going to try to learn algebra until you know how to count. Duh, how are you gonna do it? So just like that seems like a very obvious thing. It's a very similar concept in business. Startup Dojo teaches students how to count, add, and multiply your outcomes. Through mystartupdojo.com, students have learned to build projects, they get access to weekly coaching sessions, and get one-on-one support as they build a real business and learn the skill sets and the mindsets that they need to succeed. The very same skill sets and mindsets that Neil was just telling us about. So Startup Dojo coaches you as you learn how to market, develop, and grow a real brand. And from there, they teach you numerous other business skills, connect you with luminaries like Wharton professors. And Wharton, for those who don't know, it's one of the best rated business schools in the world, as well as founders of multi-million-dollar companies and even more. And the last question we have is, I'm interested in applying to Startup Dojo. What do I need to do next? In order to keep the quality of the program high, there are unfortunately a limited number of batch slots. Several early applicants have already been admitted into the February cohort, so that means there are only 5 spots left over. If you are interested in joining Startup Dojo, step 1 is to interview. This is just a 30-minute conversation. Again, only 5 slots left over, so head over to the link on the screen if you are interested in taking advantage of this opportunity before all the space runs out. So for anyone who's interested, I've also just copied the link into the chat. So please feel free to grab the link, head over right now, and get started on the application before time runs out and before all the spaces disappear. So I'll give you 10 seconds to do that. Grab the link from the chat. All right. Up next is our Student Founder Spotlight. So our Student Founder Spotlight is going to share the stories of some incredible students from across the continent. These are people who have already built businesses and nonprofits that have impacted countless people. I'm so excited to welcome them with us today. We have Linda and Molly from U of T and Stanford, respectively. So before we get into things, if you have any questions for Linda or Molly, just like with Neil, please send them in the Q&A section or in the chat, and I will try my best to get to as many as possible. Now, with that being said, let's jump right in and welcome our incredible panelists to us this evening. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello. I'm unable to start my video. I think I might need some permission for that.
Try now. Sorry about that, everyone. Technical difficulties. Amazing. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Amazing. So you have built Barter, an incredible startup that aims to make foreign traveling more affordable. You're also super passionate about social impact. Tell us more about why you are so passionate about making an impact and how your journey has gone so far.
Yeah. So talking about the social impact part, I think, and also why I decided to find a startup during high school, it's mostly because how my parents have influenced me. When I was really young, I was my parents were all entrepreneurs and have founded their own business. So when I was younger, I was influenced towards that direction. And in high school, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to attend some entrepreneurial program. Like it's kind of like it's called Launch X. Is I think it's similar to the program that it was mentioned before called Startup Dojo. So it's pretty interesting when having the opportunity to create something your own, and it give you the flexibility to work on projects that you like and forward towards the direction that you wanted to.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Lynette, for sharing a little bit about your experience with entrepreneurship, giving us a bit of a teaser. We'll dive in a little bit more in depth in just a moment. Now, Molly, you are the founder of TechShare. TechShare is a registered nonprofit that has over 150 plus volunteers. It's impacted thousands of students and won numerous awards. And you founded this while you were still in high school, and now you're on your way to Stanford. So, what motivated you to do all this while you were still a student? And just tell us more about that experience.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess my inspiration kind of came from a visit to my grandfather's rural hometown village, where I immediately noticed the kind of lack of STEM education and STEM resources, which was the subject most emphasized throughout my schooling. So I found it concerning, a bit disturbing, and decided I wanted to create some opportunity by providing an introduction to STEM for these kids and sparking their interest in a STEM career at a young age. So that's kind of where the idea came from. Then I came home and started thinking about how I could actually make an impact. And I mean, here we are today, a few years later, with a huge impact. And I'm just so proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Molly. So excited to dive in a little bit deeper with both of you. So before we get into things, just to lighten the mood a bit, both of you have gone incredibly far, and you've done so much considering how young you are and everything else. So amazing, absolutely amazing to have you here with us. How have you balanced education at some of the top high schools and universities while also running a business? So yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy that you've done that. So I have to ask, what do you do to unwind in a few words?
I guess for me, some things that are like de-stressors, something to take my mind off of things would just be like listening to music, exercising, spending some time with family, just your casual things to kind of distract you from maybe the stresses and pressures of your schoolwork or your business.
And for me, I personally really enjoy fencing, and I feel like exercise is a really great way to release stress. And along that, I sometimes just play some video games and work on some of my side projects, like in coding and app development.
Awesome. So there are a bunch of questions streaming in from the audience. So I'm going to try to go through a couple right now before I forget. So tell me about what difficulties you had in the beginnings of both of your respective ventures. How did it feel when you're in the moment? And how did you think about overcoming those difficulties? So maybe zoom in on a specific big issue you faced and how you overcame it, and just tell us about the process. Molly, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Amazing.
So I guess the biggest difficulty for me was, so I founded TechShare in my freshman year, which means I essentially had no no experience thus far with any, business running. I wasn't a founder before that. And what I did was I learned and I read a lot about how people run businesses, how people lead, how people run organizations effectively. And I'd say my biggest challenge, especially in the beginning, was with credibility. I'm sure this will be like a common theme throughout the night, but being such a young founder, you can't often get people, kind of believing or supporting your work just because you don't have a tangible impact yet. So initially in the beginning, it was really hard to just get those first events, to get that first foot in the door. But once you get, one sponsorship or one event, it gets a lot easier from there. So I'd say just in the beginning, be resilient and try your best to reach out to as many people as possible. And it'll eventually come and become easier over the years. But it's just kind of a hard obstacle in the beginning, but something that's kind of inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely an interesting challenge to overcome, because for everyone in this audience, or just for anyone starting out, credibility is always an issue. So it's really inspiring to see how you dealt with it at such a young age, at 14 years old, I guess. So do you have any recommendations for specific resources that people can start looking into? Because you mentioned you started reading and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd say generally it's important to have a network, and this is probably like going along with what advice I would give my 14-year-old self, but LinkedIn is a really valuable resource, and just reaching out and learning how to cold email and cold call is so valuable, and kind of just fearlessly working towards your mission, because you can't really have any doubts, you can't really have any fears in this situation where all you're trying to do is make an impact.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. LinkedIn, networking, really great skills. Linda, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share about your experiences as a young founder and how you kind of dealt with that specific challenge?
Yeah. Like what Molly have said, definitely LinkedIn is a really great platform to get in touch with some people you want to work with, and cold emailing is really important skill. And personally for me, back in high school, I think what was really tough was time management, like managing schoolwork and also like managing the startup. So it's a lot of workload. For me, I think how I deal with it is just to really have a schedule, list out what I want to do for this day, and have like short-term and long-term goals to have the time manage my time efficiently in order to not in order to balance the school and the startup.
Yes, right. So another question from an attendee is, they're just wondering what the process of building a startup actually looks like from the inside, which is a very fair question. It's hard to get a feel when you just see the startup and the end goal. So can you tell us a bit about what the process was like for setting up your business and getting started working? I know, Molly, you actually ran a registered nonprofit. So maybe would you like to dive in a bit more of what the logistical details of that looked like?
Yeah,
in terms of incorporating something?
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, it's a nonprofit, which is a kind of startup, but also it's a different process. So we actually took a few years just to make sure that we were creating impact and we were doing what we wanted to before we registered for that title. But what that title is, it's a 501c3, which means you register with the state, and then I think that goes like to the government, and it's a tax exempt status, which means that organizations can finally donate to you and get tax exempt from it, which is really valuable as an organization. But to get that in the first place, I reached out to like a few lawyers again on LinkedIn and just asked, and this doesn't require any money at all, just to ask how to go about filing that status. And then there are a bunch of resources. I don't remember the specific name of the website I did it on, but yeah, a bunch of resources online that you can just search up like how to register for a 501c3, and yeah, it's pretty easy from there.
Right. And Linda, do you want to talk a bit about what the setup process looked like for you. How did you go about finding a team and putting that together? Maybe marketing or any specific, business things you had to deal with at the beginning.
All right. For barter particularly, I think it was really easy since there was an entrepreneurial program where we gathered a group of people who shared the same interest, and then the team were made using like a survey, and we kind of just talked with each other and decide on the project on what to do. And for the technical side, the registering and that, we were really fortunate to have someone who's really skilled at registering company, and we had someone who just registered for us during our the first months of starting.
When you say registered, do you mean like incorporating the business?
Yeah, register. I think is registered in Michigan,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was registered as an LLC.
Okay, awesome.
Right.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, the benefit of incorporating when it comes to a business is that it creates kind of a legal barrier between what your work and the startup, and then the customer. So people can't sue you directly if anything happens. And also it just kind of creates a legal entity. And for most people when they're starting out, it's the right way to go, just because it's a good safety net and it provides a good structure in terms of, financials, whatever else. But that's kind of incorporation in a nutshell for students who are not familiar. All right, so now let's go away from all the technical nitty gritty and dive into some other questions. So when it comes to finding your idea and finding something that you want to solve. So with Molly, you had a specific niche, which was tech education and helping spread that through your nonprofit. Linda, you were working with barter. So when it comes to choosing your specific niche and the problem you're solving, how did you decide on that problem? And what advice would you give students who are looking to start a business when they're trying to think about their solution, their problem?
I can go. For barter, like before we actually came up with what we want to build, we did a lot of primary market research and secondary market research, just asking around and searching on the web to see if there is actually a need for the opportunities that we want to solve. And first of all, we decide on a general topic that we're all interested in solving. Then later on, to see if the idea we had is correct before actually proceeding.
Do you have any thoughts, Molly, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically for like nonprofits, it's really about what causes you're the most passionate about. So if there's something in your community that you don't think is right, whether it's, I don't know, something like water pollution or the homeless population, just find some specific niche, as you said, some cause that you really care deeply about, and it can only carry you farther from there.
Right. A common theme when we talk to any founders, whether it be Neil or you two, is you have problems that you're very passionate about. And when you're passionate about the problem, it becomes a lot easier to stick it through the starvation phase, as Neil put it, or whatever else, when you're starting out and everything just seems difficult. So yeah, I guess passion, choosing something you're passionate about, is a key element. Both of you, looking back in retrospect, would you say if you had to choose 3 skills or mindsets that were most important in getting you where you are today, what would those be?
I think for me, the biggest skills were number one, resiliency. That's obviously key. You can't really get, bogged down by a hurdle or some struggle in the path, because that's again, an inevitable part of the journey, and you just have to overcome that, and that's something that's always going to be there. But along with that, I'd say adaptability, the ability for you to change directions, or if you think something's going to go really well but then it's not really interpreted the same way or received the same way by the same audience, then maybe it's not such a good idea. So adaptability and flexibility is probably one of the biggest, especially when you're working in a team setting. And then the third, I'd say maybe an aspect of creativity. Again, for me, when I'm doing some events, I need to know, especially like what's best to teach them, and how I can actually go about showing them that lesson and introducing them to tech the best way, while it not being like too overwhelming for them. So yeah, those three: resiliency, adaptability, and creativity.
Do you want to share your three, Linda?
For me, I think first of all, I want to put is like communication and teamwork, since during this journey, it's not going to be easy if you're just all on your own. There's a lot of reaching out to people, working with a big group, and a lot of communicating. And second of all, I'll say is the care for detail, since a lot of things if you're planning if we are planning something, emailing to sponsors, investors, potential investors, it's really important to take care of some of the deep details you put in the email and the logistic of how you're going to operate. That is very important. And third of all, I'll say definitely flexibility, like what Molly have said, because things change a lot. Sometimes it doesn't go what's originally planned. So there's you have to have that flexibility in changing and adapting to the change.
Right. So we have so many questions streaming in from the audience. So I'm going to choose a few and let's do them a little bit rapid fire-ish. So first question, this is a quick one. Do you recommend taking business-related courses while in high school?
So for me, I go to a really small high school, and I actually didn't have any business classes available to me, at least within school. But if you're searching for classes outside of school, I wouldn't say they're necessary. But I think if you can meet, peers that are like-minded and as passionate as you, and you can maybe form a team with them to invent some startup, that would be a really valuable experience. So maybe like the LaunchX program that Linda was talking about would be a valuable program.
Yeah, and personally, I didn't take any business course in high school as well. I think it's more important on the practice, on practicing, and maybe if you want to get some hands-on experience to maybe start your own business or participate in some of the business competition, is a really good experience, and also an experience to meet some of your co-founders.
Right. So maybe not necessarily business, but programs that are aimed towards entrepreneurship are a cool bet. So again, I'm going to shout out our partner, mystartupdojo.com. Share their link in the chat again. Oh, we have another quick question. So did either of you receive any funding from either your parents or other investors? So really quickly, yes or no, Linda?
Yes. Should I talk about the fundings or
parents or other investors?
Both.
Okay, both. Cool. We'll come back to you in a second. Molly, yes or no?
Yeah, we had in the form of sponsorships.
Oh, so these were external sponsorships as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, Molly, Linda, back to you. Tell us about the external sponsors and how you got them.
Right. So there are two sponsors, sorry, not sponsorship, potential investments that we had. First one was offered by the program that was that our startup was funded in. It's called LaunchX. And the second one is we're really fortunate just to have our information posted on LinkedIn, and someone who was interested in the business just reached out to us. So we scheduled a meeting on Zoom, and yeah, it was really just really lucky. We didn't really have to reach out for.
Oh, so you just got an angel investor by having a platform online.
Yeah, so it's really important just to share what you're doing right now, and maybe post your information and current status.
Yeah, and really quickly before we get back to you, Molly, this is a good segue to answer somebody else's question, which was, should I have a website? Should I post stuff about my business idea online? Just like Linda shared, even if it isn't directly necessary for your business, oftentimes just putting stuff out on the internet can lead to interesting opportunities that you never would have seen otherwise. And there's so many free platforms that you can use nowadays to make a website, Wix, WordPress, social media, anything else. So Linda just offered us a really good story for why it is a good idea to put your info out there in the world. Now, Molly, back to you. Tell us about your investor sponsor story.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, we weren't as lucky. We had a LinkedIn page, we had a website, but we had to actually like reach out to other organizations and ask them to sponsor some events. And we also have this computer community project where we assemble and donate computers to communities abroad. So for that project, we had to fundraise a lot of money. And so it was a lot of sponsorships and partnerships. Namely, we're really close with the Boys and Girls Club and an organization in the Dominican Republic, but I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't say we're all over the board with partnerships. We have a few really dedicated sponsors that help us get things done, and it's really valuable.
Amazing. So some great insights in terms of it, both investors and sponsors with Barter and TechShare. We are unfortunately running out of time, but we have a minute left to answer one more question. So in one word, or in a couple sentences, if you could give 14-year-old you any advice, what would it be? Let's start with Linda and go to Molly.
To make it short, I'll just say not worry too much about school, focus on stuff I like, and play less video games.
For me, it's first of all, just start, go for it, never be afraid to fail, because at 14, you're supposed to fail. And then second, the network of mentors in your life, and even coming to an event like this, just keeping in touch with them and, remaining kind of close friends with them and updating them is so valuable, so important. And it's so important to keep meeting these fascinating people because they'll help you in a few years.
Amazing. Thank you both of us for joining us tonight and being a part of this absolutely incredible panel discussion. Now, to our audience, I hope you all enjoyed that just as much as I did, because I sure did enjoy this conversation. Thank you again, Linda and Molly, for being involved, sharing your incredible insights, incredible experiences with us today. Thank you so much. Again, huge round of applause. Now, I'm going to take a few minutes to share a really, really cool exclusive opportunity for all of y'all who tuned in this evening. So you're going to want to stick around and pay attention for this part. I will be sharing it on the screen briefly. Here we go for you. So if you came to this event, you are probably in the top 1% of students in terms of ambition. I know for a fact that many of you want to get into the best universities, if you aren't already there, and build an amazing life for yourself. You want to create an impact and you want to leave your mark on the world. That's awesome. I know that you have the ambition and the grit that it takes to get there. Or else, why would you be tuning in on a Tuesday evening to learn about business? So obviously, you are in the top 1% for ambition. The only gap between where you are and where you want to be is knowledge and experience. So that's why the Youth Innovation Forum wants to give you VIP access to our next event on March 15th. The next event is so cool, and we are so excited to bring the speaker to you. We had to pull some strings to make it happen, but it's going to be incredible. We're going to discuss how Aparna Raj, the CEO of Palmera.org, is solving global poverty. Yeah, you heard me right. Global poverty. You're going to learn how she got started on this massive mission and how you can also, just like her, impact tens of thousands of people. So here is the VIP registration link. For some context, we had nearly 500 signups for this event tonight. And many people who registered could not get in because of limited space. So you are now a Youth Innovation Forum VIP because you got to make it into this event. Very few people get access to this link. You are one of them. It expires in 48 hours. So if I were you, I would register right now. It's on the screen. Grab it. It's also in the chat. Grab it, get it in your browser, and start registering right now. I'll give you 10 seconds to copy it. You don't want to miss this up. You don't want to miss out on this because we're going to be opening it up to the public in 48 hours, and you're going to lose this VIP access. So do that now. While you're doing that and opening up the link, I'm going to take a quick pause to answer an anonymous question that just popped up on my screen. So here it is. I just applied for my startup dojo and I really want to get in. How long should I wait? How long should I expect to wait before I get a response? So as students are admitted on a rolling basis, you have a much higher chance of getting in if you apply early. So to the person who submitted that question, really good job, as well as the other people who have already submitted applications. The fact that you have already applied is a very, very smart move. Once you apply, you will receive an admissions decision within 48 hours. So for the next batch, again, to reiterate, there are only 5 seats open, and now you know that there are people who have already been sending in their applications. I'm going to share the link again for anybody who wants to get in and has not applied yet. So it's in the chat again, and it should also pop up on the screen soon. Grab that link as well as the VIP link right now, get it in your browser and start applying. Very limited time offer on both of those things, so you don't want to miss out. Now I'll give you a few moments to follow both of those links. And in the meanwhile, I know that there are a number of questions that we unfortunately did not have time to get to tonight. I promise that I will try my best to get to all of them. And if you are somebody who is in the audience today and had a question that we could not answer, here's what you can do. Just email me at anjali@mystartupdojo.com if you have any specific questions you want answered. I will be more than happy to follow up with you via email, personally get your questions answered for you, and make sure you get the answers and the responses that you need. We really just want to help you learn. So again, I just shared my email in the chat as well. Take it. If you have any questions you want answered, I will personally look into it and make sure we get them handled for you. Just reach out over email. Before we close off, I'm gonna give everyone a second to grab all the links, grab all the emails from the chat, save them somewhere, start registering, and get that going. Thank you again for all of our speakers and audience members for helping to make this event such a massive success. You're a part of something amazing, and I'm so excited to see you in March. Have an amazing night, and don't forget to grab those links. All right, bye-bye and take care.